Okay, Ms. Furtenbaugh, you had some comments that you wanted to ask Mr. Burnett.
Well, not really to ask, but just to make a comment. One of the things we as a board and the board has been changing over the years, we have long said we wished the architects were involved in site selection. And that was really originally the reason that was driving, let's get an architect on board before we make the site selection. So that was the driving force behind this. So I agree with all your comments. We may not be able to build the school for 3 years. There may need to be a bond referendum to get public acceptance to do additional school construction and whatnot. But the driving force was behind the school site selection to engage the architects up front. The second thing is regarding the clone. And I don't want to open a can of worms, Ms. Carpenter, but on the most recent clone, she'll know what I'm saying here. The most recent clone was fine when it was an 800 student school. But when we went to add the addition on, to add the 200 students worth of classrooms, it was not acceptable for many of the common areas such as the bathrooms. So the architect did a great 800 student school model, but it didn't work so well when we went to put on the addition. So yes, we put the additions on, and it wasn't, like you said, the way we really wanted it now. And so at that point, we decided, and Grace, is probably before you came back, we decided it's time for code reasons, for the 1,000-student concept, which we need to just plan for the 1,000 students, because we're going to be doing the additions anyways, and it costs more money. So,
Mr. Chairman, may I reply to that? I wasn't trying to insist on clones or anything that I was asking a question as someone who's been off of this board for a while, not involved in construction recently. Some of the same questions that the public is going to ask. They're going to say, why are they paying all this money for a new design when they've got all these designs in the closet? So you answered those questions for me and for the public. And I do think the idea that you brought up and that this board has decided or talked about before about having the architect on board to help find the land is a very good piece, because as I said before, you can possibly make a less than 100% desirable piece of property work if you're designing to the property. But if you already have the plan, and there are pieces of property that you'll have to discard because that plan won't fit that particular piece of property. So I think both of the things that you've done when I was not present are great ideas. I have no problem with it, but I still don't know what the rush is.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a comment to that as well. And I understand, because of course I was part of that process and board chair for 3 years during a lot of that construction. And I agree with having the architect on board, prior to, that would be a huge benefit. We've discussed that. Yes, I agree. I don't agree with us doing this in 2 weeks when we're all coming off the board. If we had 5 or 6 months left, to be able to be a part of the process, I don't think it's fair for us to tie up a decision that the new incoming people will have to work with. The time frame, I'm just not comfortable with the time frame. And I thought if we're going to allocate however many hundreds, thousands of dollars to a new design that we're not going to have for 3 or 4 years, that money I think could be better used right now with our facilities and maintenance, or, whatever. I'm sure that we have a lot of needs. My thought is we're not in a rush. We don't have anything encumbered by the commissioners. And in contrast, they're saying totally different. There may be land money there, but not anything additional. So I'm just not sure why we're having this discussion anyway. But I was thinking that if we have that kind of money, we need to allocate it somewhere else for the time frame.
Thank you, Ms. Blackwater. Board members, I thank you very much for all of your very positive input and very good points that were well taken. And my position on it is similar to Ms. Blackwelder's. I understand the need for architects being involved in the site selection and that type thing, because they can offer input that none of us that are not architects we can't see all these things. But then again, though, Mr. Burnett, something that might come into play that would help us, without the need of an architect, would be what we have already talked about, board members, and that is the study by North Carolina State University, and maybe Mr. Burnett can elaborate a little bit more on that between now and next week. Get us some more information exactly what these folks can provide for us as far as the site selection, what we can, what we can't do with geographical, demographical analyses, with all the different variables that we are looking at, when we do site selection. So that will be a tool that we've never had in the past, and so it might help us. But I don't want to see us put the cart in front of the horse, because obviously we don't have the land. We don't we're not even sure that we're going to get how much money we're going to get, if any. And I'm like Mr. Kiger. I left the commissioner meeting when we had this meeting here last week. I left a little bit bewildered, saying I went in sort of positive, and I came out saying, well, now we may not get that school after all. So at least in a reasonable time frame, because the growth is here. It's going to continue, as everybody said. Don't want to be redundant there, but we've got to act on this. And so what I would recommend, board members, is we just move this item 7.6 on over to the action agenda until the 19th. And at that time, Mr. Burnett, you can provide us with more information about the NC State study. Be as detailed as you can. Let us know what will, what can, and what shouldn't, and all that. And then at the time, the board can vote, and whatever the board decides, that's what we'll do. Is everybody good with that? Okay, that's how we'll do it. Thank you, Mr. Burnett. Okay, we're going to move on to the next 7.7, the approval to submit the training hours to the North Carolina School Board Association. It's got on this report, you will see that each of the board members have their, let me get down there. I have to, well, hold on a minute here. Yeah, this is for Ms. Carpenter, and this is when she went to the Howard Lee Institute. And so all we need to do is just put this on the consent agenda to have Ms. Carpenter's credit hours approved. Is everybody okay with that? Any comments or questions?
Now, Mr. Chair, Ms. Carpenter, I just want to make sure, are you attaching the agenda to that when it gets submitted? Because it's not in our PDF.
Yeah, I gave it to, it's got the agenda, and it's got all the classes and everything I went to during that thing. She's got all the information.
Okay, because I'm not sure if it was in Asheville just a couple weeks ago or if it was at a different meeting, but NCSBA clarified that they only give credits for your actual seat time, not for any breaks or lunches.
In none of
So-
those, it's got everything, everything.
Okay,
put
well, they'll
together.
see it when they get it then.
Okay, so what we'll do then is everybody okay? I mean, she went to the class. We know she went there. Dr. Shepard was there, and we know she was there, right?
You had a Carolyn sighting?
Yeah.
Yeah, Carolyn Sighton all the time.
Yeah,
He kept
okay.
having to say, shut up.
Anyway, so board members, if it's with your consent, we'll put this on the consent agenda for the 19th, and we'll move forward. Everybody okay?
Yep.
All right, so that's what we'll do on that for 7.7. And now we're down to 8.1, and this is the legislative agenda draft, teacher tenure. And board members, as you know, we're going to be going up to Greensboro on the 13th for where the delegates will be voting on the pleasure of this board and the pleasure of the other boards that will be represented there at the annual conference. And one of the items that they're going to be voting on is the tenure. And you've had the pros and cons, and you've got the legislative agenda. You've had this. And so what I need to do is I need to get a feel for those of us that are going on the 13th and going to be voting what the board's pleasure is. And so what, on the tenure, some of you, particularly Ms. Minot, you've been a teacher, you know all about tenure, and some of the rest of them know all about tenure and how it does this and does that for teachers. But anyway, we open it up for discussion, and we'll start on your side, Ms. Minot. Well,
I've read these, and I'm fine with them, but I will say on tenure, I have a different opinion.
Put it up, right?
I really do. I do not see the necessity for tenure. You don't have it in private business. I think that it's up to the administration to make a decision whether someone is worthy of continuing in a position or not. And if it's totally unreasonable, I think there's other things in the law that would come into play for those teachers. And here again, I guess I have a personal reason for that. I taught for 14 years, changed and taught in 4 different school systems, never did get tenure. Never one day did I worry about being fired, ever. So I think I just think it's unnecessary. That's the only one that I would have.
Okay,
a
thank you,
comment on.
Ms. Minnet. So your recommendation is that we do away with tenure, and I think that's really and truly pretty much the consensus of the legislators on this. But one of the issues that they are concerned about is how are they going to handle that? Is it anybody going to be grandfather claused in that's got tenure now? That type thing. And so, what are your thoughts on that? Anybody being grandfathered, would you
I
support?
think if you've already been told under contractual agreements that you had it, I think, yes, that would be like taking something away that somebody
Okay.
has earned.
So,
No, but I think in the future that it's an unnecessary.
so you're saying that you would support grandfathering those that's got tenure already?
Right.
Okay, that's where you're at. Okay, Ms. Carpenter, where are you at?
I kind of go along with Grace. I think grandfathering, because if you've been told something, I think you ought to keep your word. I think your word's your bond. And once you break that word, then you have nothing. And it's kind of like if you work for a company and you give them something. But then, too, you give them your word. I think you should keep it. But then you should set some type of standard, and then you be graded on that standard. If it be your children meet a certain standard, then, okay, you're going to be graded on that, whatever their standard be. But just automatic saying, okay, you've been here so many years and we're just going to give you tender and you're just going to do whatever you want. Nah. But I think if they've met that put them in its grandfather, then we're okay.
Okay, very good, Ms. Carpenter. Well spoken. Mr. Kiger, where are you at?
Well, I tell you what, I'll just be the radical of the group and tell you that I'm fine with eliminating it, and I'm okay if we don't have the grandfather clause.
Okay. All right, Ms. Blackwelder.
Oh, I guess I've been all over the place back and forth with this, getting a lot of different comments from teachers and administration. I'm actually fine with both. It appears that we're all on the same page with that, so I agree.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Blackwelder. Ms. Furtenbaugh?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to go with Mr. Kiger there. Principal tenure was eliminated. Right, Ms. Auger? Okay. So we already have teachers staff members who are working under pure performance review situations. Grace, to your point, that is the way it's done in business. And Carolyn, to your comment about if we promised, I have been in a very, public corporation, number 11 on the Fortune list, through all of these ups and downs the last 3-4 years. Nothing is ever guaranteed, but it was my performance, my individual performance, that kept me employed. And I think that's the way it needs to be, honestly, with all money, including my taxpayer dollars who help support teachers. I worry about that we have teachers this year who are teaching right now. If the legislature changes this, and they are extremely likely to change it, and they will do what they want. This is just about the position that the school system is taking. The legislature is known to prefer option 2, eliminate career status for all teachers. When we look at the big picture of things we fight for students and for public education in general, we often talk about we want to have merit pay. How do we implement merit pay for teachers? You can't have career status and implement merit pay, because career status says you can do whatever you want almost, and you still have a guaranteed job. When I spoke earlier about parents and the segregation of classroom assignments, we continue to propagate this teacher's a little nicer, a little softer, a little easier. Everybody sign up for his or her class in high school, or when you're coming in through elementary school, we're going to request that teacher because we want certain things. But if every teacher has to have that individual drive, just like every employee who works anywhere else, and that personal drive to be motivated and whatnot. And I'm guessing we're talking about the 98% and the 2% here. 98% have the drive, but we as a board have our hands tied. The superintendent has his hands tied when there are teachers who are not performing sufficiently and who need to have that extra motivation through that performance review. That does mean you continue in your current employment. So I worry about, when I look at option 2 and the cons, I did have a chance to talk to our NCSBA leadership about that. Lawsuits will be abundant. And they said, they're not really sure how to read it. There are sometimes bigger issues to fight that, people, there may not be that many lawsuits, because this is a brief from them, from NCSBA. This is not a, like a legal, legislative brief kind of thing from the General Assembly. But I worry about the decrease in employee morale from 2 ways. One, from losing career status, but also from the standpoint of we have these teachers who would potentially get career status this year. They're teaching their 4th year in our district, and they will not be getting it because this changes. How will they feel? So yes, you're treated differently than me, and the only difference was you worked 6 months longer than me. It's not about their performance at all. I think if we make it about individual achievement, individual performance, then everybody's treated the same. So.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Furtenbaugh. So you're saying you're option 1? All
That
that,
too.
Option 2.
you're option
Yeah.
2. Okay,
Yeah.
so, you're saying doing away with it
Unfortunately,
all
option two.
together. Okay, all right, Mr. Furr, where are you at?
I was going to tell you, I was going to say the same thing Ms. Furtenbaugh just said, but I'm going to say it in 6 words. Eliminate career status for all teachers.
Okay, Mr. Furr. All right. Well, the thing is, now, as you know, we're divided on this. We've got a couple that says grandfather those in that's already got it. We got a couple that says, just do away with it altogether. And so, yeah, I noticed that, but this is not really something that requires a vote. The vote will take place in Greensboro. And whoever our delegates are, we've got 3 delegates, I think, going, maybe 4. I won't ask who's going. You know who you are. And so now you got to tell me whenever we wrap this up, what we're going to vote, because we got to have a consensus from our board. And if I got 2 or 3 and 4, I guess we'll go with the 4. The 4, is that right?
Well, that's why can we
Let's
not
have a
vote on
clarification.
this?
Let's just have a clarification by show of hands, even if not an official vote.
All right, for option 1, those that are in favor of option 1, that's to grandfather the teachers who currently have career status. And if you support option 1, let me see your hands. Okay, well, it's clear. It's clear. No, she's,
Grace was a 1.
yeah, she was a 1, Carolyn's a 1, I'm a 1. And so that settles it. That we got 4 that says they want to do away with it, and so that would be 4 for option 2. So it will be option 2 for our delegates that are going. And unfortunately, if, like Carolyn, you're against it, you're going to have to vote for it if we go to Greensboro, because that there is the desire of the
Wait a
board.
minute, she was a 1, and we're voting, or the delegates are voting for 1.
No, the delegates.
No.
You
it's
have
only
to vote as
4.
the board.
Where were you at?
Oh, wait, you just took a show of hands.
Yeah,
And
me,
there's-
Grace, and now, did you have your hand up?
Tell who the delegates are.
I'm going.
I think-
Who else is going?
I'm going.
Blake?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I actually think, my understanding is that part of the conference will be a discussion of the 2 options, so I would suggest that rather than kind of pre-commit and vote now, one of the reasons you've got delegates and you have that ongoing dialogue is to have that discussion and hear the various views. I think it's a great idea for you to talk amongst yourself, but rather than try to lock everybody in, see what you may get more information and arguments at the conference itself that sways the delegates that are actually there. So,
Well,
We know that our board said 2 to 4.
well, the only thing is that's not the direction that we got from Leanne Winter from the North Carolina School Board Association. She said that our board needs to vote the pleasure of this board, not our individual. Now, that's what the letter said for us to do.
I want you to pre-vote that now, not
Well,
while
we
you're
got,
there.
I can't vote, I can't vote for Holly, but I can vote for all the board if that's what the board wants to do. I mean, we have to come up with a consensus of what the board wants, and then that's what the delegates vote for. Like if Carolyn, myself, and Grace are saying that we want option 1 and the rest says option 2, then those of us will have to vote for option 2 as the option of the board. Is that not what it says?
Yes, I was confused. I thought there were 4 votes for option 1, and Mr. Carpenter was on option 1. I misinterpreted Holly's hand. I
Okay.
didn't see it go up, so I had a miscount. So,
Okay, well,
okay,
I'm looking at-
I'm with you now.
I got you back, Blake. No problem, brother.
Mr.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, are we going to go over the legislative draft? And the reason that I do ask this, there are a couple questionable items on the draft themselves, which most of them I feel that our board can agree upon. But there are a couple questionable items on the draft that I feel that this board may need to discuss.
Well, here's
Well, you know what it's going to be. One is charter schools and one is virtual schools. Now, some of us may feel strongly about some of those and some of us may not, but we will be voting on those. And again, it may be something we may want to vote on because they will be voted on there. Now, we know where a lot of the school boards will be coming on those, but those are items on this agenda, and we will be voting on them, and they will be separately on the agenda. Now, this is up to you, Mr. Chairman, but these are items on there.
Well-
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'll call your attention to, we each had a chance to respond already individually to
Right.
the NCSBA survey.
Right.
We had our voice. These positions are the majority of that voice already across the state, Carolyn.
That's it.
So this legislative agenda, the only thing that was really new was the tenure, and that's more coming from the legislature as, they want a position on it, basically. And I think that's why it was called out at the law conference Lynn and I attended, and they wanted that handled separately. The rest of these, I don't believe, are voted on individually. They're more being voted on by platform,
Package. It's a
the
package.
whole bundle.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, we each had our voice already in these topics by submitting our responses to that survey.
Right.
So,
They broke them out last year. We voted on them separately last year.
I think it was only any major changes, and this 10-year career status issue is a major change. The other ones, if they were already presented as a position in the survey that we were given to respond to, and they haven't changed, I believe those will be voted on as a bundle.
So you're saying they're going to vote for the whole thing and not by item? Because they voted on them by item last year.
Yeah, not completely. If it was already presented to us with no changes. Now, again, as Mark said, people can make cases there to change something that they want worded, because I've stood up in the past and asked for wording changes. But they will be for a bundle, so, like I said, we all had our voice in this already, so.
Thank you, Ms. Furtenbach. It's the position of the board to vote. The delegates will vote the pleasure of the board, even if you're against it. That's what we're doing. Because 4 of us have said they want option 2, and 3 of us said they want option 1. So those of us that's going, me included, and you included, will be voting for option 2 because that's the pleasure of the board. Now, are we clear on this?
Yeah, I am. But if this
Okay.
other comes up, what are we? Okay, never mind. But all right, I asked the board, so I'm gonna. You're not telling me anything on this other. Okay,
right.
thank you.
All right, you're very welcome, Ms. Carpenter. Okay, so now that we've got that settled, we talked about that long and we did some of the other things. But anyway,
You guys hear me chuckling when I'm voting for option 2, and so are y'all, you'll know why I'm chuckling.
oh my goodness. Okay, board members, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for your input and your valuable time tonight. And we'll be meeting back on November the 19th. I would tell you to be sure to go out and vote, but by the time you hear this and see this, you'll have already voted. So, but anyway, with that being said, I need a motion that we adjourn this meeting and we'll be going home. A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Okay, with that being said, good night to everybody. Good night to the viewing audience, and join us on the 19th if you can. Thank you for being here. Good night.